I walked in the door just a mess, and he does like a double take and he looks at me and he starts cussing at me. He's like, "Where the effing hell have you been?" He goes, "Why haven't you answered your phone, idiot?" And I was like, "Well, I'm here now." He goes, "Come here." And he pulls up his laptop, the little iPad they use, and he goes, "You see everything in red right here? That means you're dying."
Todd, how did you find carnivore?
Well, like most people, I saw Dr. Baker on Joe Rogan, and so that was back when he first came out, and so I tried it back then, which was what, 2018 or so, and I had pretty good results. I'd lost like 80 pounds, but the problem was I didn't understand carnivore like I understand it now. That was before I started watching Chafee and Ken Berry, and I was still having cheat days when I would go to a show or a trade show, and I was like, well, I'm just going to eat whatever I want. I was still using a lot of spices, and but I was just drinking water. I was also drinking coffee, and then I started watching Anthony Chafee, and he was like, that last 5% will give you a 95% result, and man, did it ever. But I'm getting kind of ahead of myself. So I did all, I did all the carnivore for a while. It had really good results, and then COVID hit, and things just kind of went haywire. And and I just started eating regular food. It wasn't a big concern at the time because I was just doing it for weight loss reasons at the time. Well, fast forward till now, and in October, well, I just before, in the first part of October, I decided to go ahead and go to the doctors and get a checkup. And so I did blood work and everything, and then I just kind of forgot about it. And on October 29th, I was here in my workshop, and it was about 11 o'clock at night, and I just started shaking. I mean, shaking like I was convulsing. And then I go down, and I'm in my chair up my workshop, and I'm just shaking like I'm getting the flu. Well, then I lost all my bladder control. And if that's never happened to you, that's a little terrifying. And I was like, oh no, what is happening to me? And so I called my wife. I said, you have to come get me. I can't drive home. So she came and got me. And the next day I wake up and my right leg is just swollen up huge and it's purple. It's just bright red. And so I go back to the doctor, and when I go in, I kind of hit it off with this male nurse because he was in the Marine Corps and I was in the Army, and we were teasing each other. And I was telling him, oh, if I'd have known you were here, I would have brought some crayons for you to eat. That's a big joke about the Marine Corps crayon eaters. And we hit it off, and we were just joking. Well, I walked in the door just a mess, and he does like a double take and he looks at me and he starts cussing at me. He's like, "Where the effing hell have you been?" He goes, "Why haven't you answered your phone, idiot?" And I was like, "Well, I'm here now." He goes, "Come here." And he pulls up his laptop, the little iPad they use, and he goes, "You see everything in red right here? That means you're dying." And I was like, "Yeah, well, that's kind of why I'm here." And I explained to him what was happening the night before, and the doctor came in at that point, and I was telling them, and they said, "Well, your blood glucose is 344. And that was your kidney shutting down, and that was you dying." And that was, and I said, "Well, why did I urinate all over myself?" And she said that because you had so much glucose in your urine that your brain was just taking over and trying to get rid of it. And just so how we could control our bladder, it's voluntary. Well, she said at that point, your brain made it involuntary and said, well, if you're going to have all this poison in you, I'm going to take over and try to fix this. Well, it didn't work. And so my leg was edema, pitting edema. And he pushed it, and I'd never even heard of that. And he pushed his finger in my shin, and it just made this big dent. And I was like, what is that? He goes, yeah, that's called pitting edema. He goes, yeah. He goes, you are so diabetic, dude. He goes, it's unbelievable. And so we were just talking, I did some more tests, and I told the doctor, she goes, well, I can put you on metformin and do all the whole rigmarole. And I was like, what about carnivore diet? And she goes, that's the other thing I was going to say. And I said, well, I had some really, really good luck with that several years ago. And she goes, well, I'm ordering you back on the carnivore diet. She goes, you do it right now. And I said, no problem. And that was October 29th. So I wrote it down. That's 162 days ago. And since then, my blood glucose has gone from 344 or whatever it was to it averages, my weekly average is 106. So, but it's just unbelievable, the myriad of changes, because when I first started doing it, I started doing the keto. I was having like cabbage and avocado with olive oil salads just for the variety, because before I was still having a lot of cravings. That's because I didn't let go of everything, and I was keeping the cravings still coming. And so I was I was like, I'm just going to do keto. It'll be fine, this and that. And so I was starting to lose some weight, but I didn't have any of the like amazing changes or anything like that. I lost a lot of water weight. The pitting edema went down. Well, then because of the scare, I really started doing a deep dive into this and started researching it as much as I could. And that's when I found Anthony Chafee, and I really paid attention to the things he was saying, and talking about how the plants are, the toxins, and it gives your body something to have to work on. And then it just really made sense. I'm like, okay, so the weight isn't the problem. It's just one of the symptoms of the problem. And so it's like, well, and I was also listening a lot to Stan Ekberg, Dr. Ekberg in Atlanta, Georgia. And he was talking a lot about diabetes. And he was talking about, he said, the diabetes isn't a disease. He goes, it's an adaptation to an overload of carbohydrate. That's all it is. Because every video I saw until I got on the carnivore thing, they were saying, no, it's progressive, it's ongoing, it's chronic, you can never get rid of it. Well, that's not true. I'm here to tell you that it's not true. You can absolutely get rid of it. And so I was, the further I dove into it, then I wanted to learn more about insulin. So then I found Dr. Ben Bickman. And man, does that guy know about insulin. And so I started learning about that and learning about getting my baseline insulin back down to normal. And so anyway, I just kept going. And at some point, when I listened to Anthony Chafee, I decided, well, I'm gonna get rid of the garlic powder, the pepper, and the coffee, because that was the only plant matter I had at all. And I did. And within a week or two, the weight just started shedding off of me. And so to date, in 162 days, I've lost 92 pounds, which is pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable. I went from 375 pounds and just miserable, sick, fat, and dying to 284 this morning. So anyway, I'm just still going. So, well, that has an effect, with people around you. So I'm around quite a few people because I go to these trade shows because I make custom knives. And so I'm at this show last month, and I don't know how many people, and a lot of these guys I've known for 20 years or more, but I only see them like twice a year, And so I had so many people come up to me and they were like, what the heck have you done? What are you doing? You look amazing. And I was like, you're not feeling me. So I told him. And so anyway, the show ended, and I got 6 phone calls the next day, all from knife collectors and other knife makers that know me. And they were like, dude, so fill me in on this thing you were telling me at the show, because I need that. What is that? And so there's 6 people going, and one of them, this knife collector, his mom has Alzheimer's. And so I was like, perfect. I said, are you in charge of her food? He goes, yeah. He goes, I do all her shopping. I cook for her. I said, perfect. I said, are you willing to feed her too? I said, because I've seen some videos now where this has a real effect on that. And he's like, absolutely. He goes, actually, it's funny because when she knows I'm going to the store, she goes, get me steak. And so I was like, perfect. She already loves steak. And so I got him going on it. And about a week and a half into it, I get a text from him. And it just says, dude, what the hell is happening to me? I was like, what are you talking about? He goes, I feel like a damn vampire. He goes, my brain. And I said, he's like, this is unbelievable. He goes, I sleep and then I wake up and I'm just like, he goes, and I can even I feel like I see faster now or something. He goes, it's unbelievable. I said, well, get used to your new normal, because that is how a human being is supposed to feel, apparently. I said, because that's the way I feel now. And so I told my wife the same thing. We're big movie fans, and We like the vampire movies, Anne Rice and all that. And we made a joke years ago. I'm like, if you ever get bit by a vampire, you better bite me too, because I don't want you leaving me and going off into eternity. And I want to experience, we just joke about it. She goes, well, you better bite me too. Well, I called her one day at the shop. I was just having this insane mental clarity. And I call her at the house and I was like, hey, we joke about that. I said, I feel like that. I said, I don't know what's happening. I said, but even my vision is better. I said, my sense of smell, my hearing, my clarity. I said, it's unbelievable. I said, you have to experience this. You have to. So now she's doing it. So that's, and then there was another guy. Then there was another night maker from Ireland, and, kind of a pudgy guy, really nice guy. And he was like, hey, he goes, I noticed you're looking pretty fit there, lad. He goes, what are you doing? And so I told him the whole thing. And so I messaged him maybe a week or two ago. I said, well, how are you doing on that? He goes, I'm down 1.5 stones. And I was like, well, I don't know what that. He goes, that's like 14 point something pounds. Or he goes, for 1 stone. I was like, awesome. He goes, I'm not quitting. This was amazing. And so I'm just super happy. And then this other guy came up to me. He was in a mobility chair, and he looked at me and he's just kind of like side-eyeing me. And he goes, what the hell's happening to you, man? He goes, last year at this show, you were in one of these chairs. I was like, yeah, because I always have really bad ankle and arthritis, and that's completely gone. All that joint pain is completely gone. I could not close my hands because of the nature of what I do with polishing and everything. I couldn't close my hands for years. Now I can make complete fists. That is new. That is completely new. And anyway, he was saying, he goes, I've known you for a long time. He goes, and I see you limping. Sometimes you have a cane. And he goes, look at you. He goes, you're walking around like a supermodel. He goes, what's going on? So I turned him on to it. That's the guy I was telling you that lost the 31 pounds, right? And so I was a little worried because about a week into it, about a week and a half, I messaged him. I said, how are you hanging in there? I told him, I said, get ready for the sugar cravings. And he goes, oh, I'm doing all right. He goes, whenever I get one of those sugar cravings, I just eat some pineapple. I was like, you're kind of missing the point, Spence. It doesn't quite work. So what you got to do is eat some meat and eat like Dr. Baker says, eat the meat until the craving goes away. Okay. And he was like, okay, yep. And then he's like, I went into town the other day. He lives out in the country here in Texas where I'm at. He says, and I went into town and I hadn't eaten yet. He goes, I got real hungry. And he goes, man, they were selling these jalapeno poppers that I really like. He goes, so I got a few, and he goes, they were fried in seed oil. And I was getting ready, I was rearing back to like tell him, dude, stay away from that. And he goes, don't worry. He goes, it came with an ass whooping. He goes, there's no way I'm doing that again. He goes, I felt horrible. he goes, those cheats come with a butt whooping. He goes, I'm done doing that. And so I was like, good. I'm glad you realize that. We, just to do that. So anyway, it's just been great. So the guy whose mother has the Alzheimer's, he's the one that said, what's happening to me, and all that. Well, and so I messaged him a while back and I was like, how's your mom responding? He goes, unbelievable. He goes, I see this light in her eye. He goes, I was talking to my friend and I said a joke and she laughed and she got it. And he said, then her nurse came at some point and said, what are you doing to her? Did you change her meds or something? And he's like, no, I'm feeding her meat. And she's like, this is pretty unbelievable. And so the nurse told the doctor about it. And then the doctor showed up and said, wanted to see this for himself. And apparently she is so different, changing and heading back the other direction, that they want to take her to some medical center and do some sort of scan and look at her brain and see what's going on, because they had never heard of this, the doctor and the nurse. And they're like, you're doing what? He said, I'm just feeding her meat, fatty red meat and eggs and bacon, and that's it. And it's I don't want to say it's curing it, but it's having an effect for sure, to the point where they want to like look inside her head with a scanner and see what the heck's going on in there. So that is so awesome for me because the way I feel, I get to help some other people. And then I was telling these stories to my mother over the phone, and she struggled with her weight off and on her whole life, and diabetes, and she's in her 80s, and I was like, well, this is this is something, and she loves to cook and she loves food just like me. And she's like, well, I'm going to try it. I'm going to do it. I was like, you are? She goes, yep. So she's been doing it right around a month. She's lost weight. She hadn't left her apartment in maybe 3 years. She's just been her gout and massive joint problems, overweight, couldn't do anything or didn't want to do anything. So I just explained to her, I said, and then also she was, for decades, she was just a really gifted seamstress. She made clothing and she was a crafter, she had all of the equipment and she made amazing articles, just wonderful things. Well, she's put all that away. She just lost interest in it. And I said, well, don't be surprised if you don't start feeling better and your interests begin to reignite, because that's happened to me on some things I haven't done in years. I'm like, that I used to love. And I'm like, man, I want to do that again. It's like starting this fire and it's reigniting this certain passions for certain things that I've had. And I said, that's probably what's going to happen to you. I'm like, don't sell your equipment. She's like, oh, you think so? And I was like, yeah. And I told her, I said, here's the deal. I said, I said, you need to start walking, Mom. And she looks at her, what do they call that, step counter or whatever. She goes, well, I'm looking at it and it says I walked 16 steps yesterday. I was like, okay, we got to change that. And I said, so you can stand up, right? In the chair. She's out in California. She's like, yeah, I can stand up. I said, I want you to do that 5 times every day. Just stand up. Okay. And then sit back down and stand up. And then I said, you check your mail every day at the end of the hallway, right? And she's like, yeah. I said, I want you to get your walker and just walk to your mailbox back and forth at least 3 times a day. She's like, oh, I don't know. I said, just trust me. I said, pretty soon you're not going to have a choice. She's like, well, what do you mean? I said, your body's going to compel you to move. And everybody I've gotten going on carnivore, I told them that, and they would message me and they said, I know what you're talking about now. My body's forcing me to move. And it happens to me. So when I started this, I was like, all of a sudden I got compelled to start moving. And so I've got a parking lot out here in front of my workshop, and I walked to the end of the parking lot and back before my ankles were killing me. And I made it back and forth in the parking lot. I was like, okay, that's good. So I did that maybe 3-4 days, and I was like, all right. And so I did. So then I walked around the building, did that. Well, then I got in my car and I kind of drove around. This was an industrial area. I mapped out a 1 mile, lap, and I was like, I'm gonna make it a mile this week. So I made it the mile, and it was hard. I was limping, Well, now last month I walked 85 miles, and so what I do when I'm working and I want to take a break, rather than just sit down and get tired, take a nap, I go for I do a mile lap, and I'll do that anywhere from 3 to 6, 8 times a day. And then even now I pulled my old rucksack off the wall that I had in the Army, and I filled a 5-gallon water can with water and put that in there. So the whole thing's like 52 pounds. I'll throw that on, and I'll start and I'll do miles with that. And it's so weird because I had zero inclination to do any of that, but I just feel like my body's forcing me. And then I was listening. This is just my theory, but I was listening to Sten Ekberg, and he was talking about brain health, how it correlates to movement. Okay. And he was saying that, he goes, there's certain things on this planet that don't move, and they're called plants. He goes, if you have a brain, it's one of its main functions is so that you can keep track of your body relative to gravity. And so your brain understands which muscle to move in which direction. And he says, this is when you know that your brain health is starting to fade. He said, when you walk, if there's no swing to your arm, if they're just stationary at your sides, they're not swinging like they used to. And I was listening to this while I was on one of those walks, and my arms are straight at my sides. And I was like, uh-oh. He goes, so I want you to start swinging your arms. He goes, and where your shoulders cross your hips, and it makes an X shape when you're walking. He goes, that is what sends the signals to your brain that you're moving and doing. He goes, so you have to do that. You have to eat fatty red meat with the cholesterol and everything, and you have to show it this movement, and then it'll start fixing the atrophy and repairing, almost like you're working on a muscle for the first time in a long time. And so I was like, well, what do I got to, so I started doing it. I made sure to, swing my shoulders and swing my arms. And I noticed within a week or so, um, I was like, oh, my shoulder and my hands were swinging normally again. So that corrected itself. And so whatever, deficiency I think was going on there is definitely, I'm not going to say it's completely gone. It's a miracle, but it's definitely trending the other direction. So it's amazing. And I just feel awesome. And there's so many problems. And I mean, when we first emailed each other, I sent you that long list of things that I've noticed have changed, the sleep apnea, the high blood pressure, all these things, skin issues. I used to have cracked, bleeding feet, heels that are always bleeding and cracked most of my adult life. Well, it's all gone. It's just fresh skin now. My teeth don't hurt. It's just crazy things. And I was trying to explain it to somebody, the way that feels like. If you've ever been sitting next to a fan, just kind of over here, and after a while you kind of forget about it, and you don't notice how loud and annoying it is until you turn it off. Then you're like, wow, and you notice all that silence all of a sudden. Well, that's what happens on carnivore. There's all this background noise of pain and dysfunction that seems to just melt away. Then you don't even realize it. You don't notice it. And then all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't hurt. When's the last time that hurt? I don't know. That's weird. Ask your wife, honey, when's the last time that? She's like, I don't know. And when I'm working, I notice I'm like, I can close my hands all the way. This is weird. Or I'm sleeping. And that was the first thing I noticed was the sleep. That I just, the sleep apnea and the snoring was just gone. And I used to wake up several times a night, to go to the bathroom. That's completely gone. And we got this joke. We used to tell my wife was sit on the edge of the bed in the morning and warm up like an old Buick before you can stand up. And he goes, well, that's gone. I just wake up like I did when I was, in my 20s, and I feet hit the floor, good to go, ready to go. You're energetic. And the other thing I noticed was unbelievable for the mental health. There's depression, anxiety, all these things that come with running a business and doing these different things. You still have those things that happen, but I notice the way that I react to them is completely different. Instead of, like, when you get a bad email or something, you know what I'm talking about, where you just stressed out. It's like, on your, now my brain's just like, okay, it's a problem. Let's figure it out. It's like, calm down. This is what we're going to do. And then even that, like solutions to problems, that just, you think about it differently, and then you come up with a solution that you would have never come up with before. A creative solution or something. You're like, the solution to this is to give it up, give that up, and don't do it anymore. And you're like, something, like, I was like, I've been hanging on to that my whole life. What do you mean give it up? It's like my carnivore brain's like, yes, give it up. So anyway, there's all these things that are just amazing that are happening. And even my 14-year-old son, he's really interested. He's big into fighting. He's into Brazilian jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, and he wants to compete and all this. And I told him, I said, if we get you going on this, I said, it's going to have an unbelievable advantage effect for you. And I showed him some of Dr. Chafee's videos where he talked about where he was carnivore when he was an athlete, doing rugby. So you see what he's saying? He's talking to young athletes, telling them the advantage. And so he's kind of interested in it. And then, I don't know, about a week ago, he had a friend spend the night, and I came back from work, and there was cookies and junk food on the coffee table. I just looked at it, and he looks at me, he goes, yeah, it's junk food. I said, no, it's human food. I said, I'm on the werewolf diet. And he started laughing. I said, and you're eating like a human. And he started laughing, but now he's talking about, well, maybe I will try it. But then he said something really funny. He said, Dad, he goes, I am 14. I'm technically a child. He goes, I don't have the metabolic problems or whatever you called it. And he goes, I can pretty much eat what I want and I'll be fine for a while. And I was like, yeah, rub it in. I said, that's true. That's true. You're not going to have diabetes and everything right now. I said, but it comes with a whole bunch of other benefits, just cutting out the vegetables and everything. Of course, I don't push it on them or anything. I just let them see the example. And that's one of the things with my wife, I started researching this and started telling her about it. Finally, I was like, okay, I'm just going to be quiet. I'm just going to let her see the differences. And when I was at about 80 or 75 pounds or something like that, she goes, okay, what do I got to do? Because she's really, her problem was she's really addicted to sugar, or was. It's coming down, and she was, I said, here's what you got to do, and I said it's carbs, it's sugar, and this is how you do it, and this is what you'd expect. And one of the things I noticed, and one of the things I tell all these people, including my mom and my wife and all these guys that I'm talking to, and I tell them, I said, so when you're doing this, about a week and a half or so into it, I said, I smelled my urine had a really strange odor to it. And I said, what I think that is, I don't know, but I think that's all that water inflammation leaving you. And it just smells weird. I said, so if that happens to you, I want you to tell me, okay? And sure enough, my mom called me. She goes, well, honey, this is embarrassing, but my urine has a strange odor. I was like, yes. I said, that means it's working. And then my wife, same thing, she texted me. She's like, my pee smells weird. And I was like, yep. I said, okay, it's working. But I don't know scientifically if that means it's working, but that's what happened to me. And so far, everyone that's been on carnivore is like, yeah, I noticed that too when I first got going. And I think that's when you're dumping all that water inflammation, I think. I don't know. But it would make sense, My mom's like, why does it smell bad? I said, because it's probably water you drank in 1983. It's been in it all time. And so you're getting rid of it. And so anyway, I'm really, really excited for this journey. I have zero desire to go back. And I mean, I'm one of those guys. I love like craft beer, IPA, and the breweries and all that. And I just loved it. But I haven't, since October 29th, I haven't had a sip, nothing. And I don't really crave any. I don't even want any, and I was like, and then I got to thinking about that. I'm like, well, how many guys do I know that come home, on the way home, they stop and get a 6-pack and they drink it? And do they all just love beer? Or is it because they're dealing with stress and failures and all kinds of other things, and they want to take a little mini vacation from it every night in front of the TV and just zone out for a minute? And I had to admit that that's what I was doing. I'd buy a 6-pack of beer. I just love this beer. Well, and I also love, having a little buzz and not having to deal with emotions and things like that too. Well, one of the things I noticed, I'm like, what, on carnivore, that mind, whatever is going on in your mind, it's not there. You don't want a break from it. You don't need a break from it. You don't need to escape from it. And I understand you've had a very similar experience where you're like, I really, what was causing me to drink in the first place? And I'm not an alcoholic, but I do, I will admit that, yeah, when you drink, you get a buzz, and it feels good to not, it numbs things, right? And so, but like last time I did carnivore, I went 8 months with no alcohol, and so but I can understand how guys that do drink a lot, they get a nasty beer habit every night. How they just like getting away from the problem for a couple hours in the evening. And what's really neat, and one guy in particular I've been talking to, he's like, oh, I really like beer. I'm like, I did too. And I said, it's not that you're going to hate beer now, or you're going to hate the taste of beer. I said, you're not going to need, or you're not going to have the desire to escape your circumstances anymore. I said, because your circumstances are completely different. I said, and your way of looking at your circumstances are completely different. It doesn't look like a big, endless void of despair to you. I said, your brain's going to look at problems, and it's going to begin to prioritize and organize them and help you solve them. It's like, okay, yeah, we got a problem here. Let's fix it. Let's figure out a way. And you've probably experienced a similar thing where your brain just organizes things differently when you're on carnivore. And I've read thousands of comments at this point where people have said similar things, And what did I'm sure you saw that Jordan Peterson interview where he said he was talking to some doctor, and the doctor said, well, that's anecdotal. He goes, well, yeah. He goes, but when you have hundreds of thousands of anecdotes, now you have a hypothesis. And
yeah. Congratulations first. And man, you're having such a big impact as well. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah. And I had no intention of having a big impact. I just didn't want, I didn't want to go on insulin and metformin, and I didn't want to, lay in my shop and die on the floor. And so I'm like, well, I better do something. Well, I had no idea what was going to happen to me. And like I said, I'd done this before, but I didn't give up the spices and the coffee. And when I was listening to Chafee talk about that, I'm like, that can't be real. I'm like, well, what have I got to lose? I've, except my health. And so I'm going to try it. And sure enough, most of the benefits came after I gave up those last few things of vegetable matter. And so I was trying to explain that to my mom. I said, the way it seems to me, I'm always coming up with analogies to try to figure out a way to explain things. I said, imagine you've got this big house with a family, and it's been run down your whole life. And then all of a sudden the family wins $1 billion. And which is the resources that we get on carnivore. I said, and then they just start fixing everything. They'll run down, they're like, fix this, fix that, new carpet, new drapes, new floors, new this. I said, that's what your body's going to do. It's called autophagy and mitophagy. Your body's going to go into repair mode, and everything's just going to start repairing itself, to include the excess fat. I said, your body doesn't need that on you. That's just one of the symptoms of everything being messed up. I said, now it's got all the resources it wants. I said, but the problem is when we put the toxins in there. I said, imagine we're trying to do this remodel project and we lit the house on fire. I said, what would we have to do? We would have to stop remodeling and put the dang fire out before we could do any more remodeling. I said, that is exactly what our body does when we put toxins in it. It looks at that, it's like, oh no, and it fixes that, and it has to, whatever it does to the liver, and it gets it out of our system. Then it goes back to, okay, I hope that was a one-time deal. And then it starts fixing everything, and I just like, well, just get out of your own way. Just let your body do what it wants to do, give it what it wants to heal everything, all the fat that it wants, especially when I'm talking to a female. I'm like, there's a lot of hormonal issues, and even men, with the testosterone and everything. I said, this stuff is gonna resolve, it will resolve to the best of its ability. I mean, there's certain things that obviously can't resolve, things that are permanent damage. There's such a thing as damage done, and when it's done, it's done. But even, look what happened with you with the limp since you were 17 years old. That's an unbelievable story. Your body, so apparently your body all of those years wanted to fix that. It wanted to, but it couldn't because you were getting in the way with toxins. And it's just like, well, yeah, it's kind of what it is. And so that's what I'm doing. And even my hair, obviously I've got gray hair, but my son was looking at me the other day when I picked him up from school. He's like, Dad, your hair is darker. He goes, it isn't as white. He goes, your hair is getting darker. And I was like, huh, yeah, I think you're right. It is getting darker. And that's the other thing. I had these three fingers, for years now, my fingernails have just been like peeling off of the nail beds. And so I kind of researched that, and I think it might have been candida, I think the word, like a yeast issue. And it said that the yeast, it lives on glucose, just like when they, ferment alcohol with yeast, and it eats the sugar. Well, since I went on carnivore, they're going in order. The thumb is completely healed. It's like it never happened. This finger is right there. It's like almost there. The middle finger is now healing. So that's going away. It's unbelievable what's happening. And
Awesome.
and when I talk to people, I'm like, hey, I'm not telling you every single problem you have is going to fix. I'm just telling you it's going to be really cool when your body starts fixing things you didn't even know were wrong. Skin tags are falling off. Crazy things. So, and I just tell them, I'm like, I want you to look at Ken Berry. I want you to look at Anthony Chafee. I said, I want you to look at Ken Berry to get the nuts and bolts on how to do this. I want you to listen to Anthony Chafee to figure out why we're carnivores. And I want you to look at Dave Mack for inspiration, because all he does is interview carnivores, and it makes when you're feeling like you're alone, you're not alone. And you're like holding the torch out there for guiding a lot of people in that regard. And it's awesome what you're doing. That's why I reached out to you. And I was like, and when you made that video about, hey, if you've got a story, and I don't even comment on YouTube videos, nothing. And I was just like, why am I doing this? Why am I reaching out like this? But I don't know. The carnivore is making me do it, but I don't know what it is. Oh, and Carrie, with Healing Humanity, that's really inspirational, and I understand how fired up he is. How he's just like, it's changed my life. I get it. I get it. And so, and it's had these massive effects. I mean, around the house, projects my wife's been wanting me to do for years. I'm like, all right, I'm going to go do that, fix that. It's like, oh, this doesn't fit through here. I'll take the door off. And she's just watching me. She said, what are you doing? I said, I'm taking this over here and I'm fixing that. I said, didn't fit the door. So she goes, and I said, yeah, I said, this would have been harder when I was fat. And she goes, it wouldn't have happened. It didn't happen. And I was like, there you go. So
isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting how, like, now it's almost like we're on, hyperdrive or something. We're going so fast, but our mind keeps up with it now.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable when you start working. Like I really noticed, and I've been making knives and doing my craft for 41 years now. Okay, so I really know what's happening during the process when I'm doing this. Well, even that is completely different. I'll be sitting there just engrossed in what I'm doing, and time. They call it the flow state. You can get into that flow state so easily, and and it's just unbelievable. It's just unbelievable what happens. And or the other things, my wife asked me to do something. I'm like, sure, and I start doing it, and it doesn't nothing irritating. And I told her something the other day. I said, you know what I noticed? Actually, when the kids would do something, and just a typical family situation, something annoying happens or something like that. I said, I tried not to show it, but I would get upset by it, and I'd be, I'd be annoyed by it, and like, oh man, this is just so, I can't believe this, this situation, that whatever. Well, not just the kids, but any kind of situation. And I said, and now it's like I'm not annoyed. I'm not annoyed anymore by anything. We had a situation that would have been really annoying to me in the past, but it happened. I was like, oh well, things happen. Let's just fix it and deal with it, and just did it and went through the process. And she kept looking at me. She goes, "Are you? Well, thank you for acting this way. I'm glad you're so okay with it." I'm like, yeah, well, things happen, and I was kind of, and this was fairly early on, and I was like, wow, I'm really not annoyed by this. And that's when I noticed, that I don't know what they call it, mindset, mood, whatever it is. You have to ask Jordan Peterson, but whatever that is. But and I know you know what I'm talking about, where you just kind of go into well, let's repair it, let's fix it, whatever the problem is, and let's not make a big deal of it, and you don't brood on things, and whereas I used to, and I think a lot of people do, a lot of the mental health issues that we have in our societies now, and all these problems. I think a lot of it I think a lot of it's our food. Say after listening to Chafee talk about Ansel Keys and all the food industries, and now the food industries making diabetic medicine, and then it just gets all revealed to you in a way. It's like, I think you had a guest on that was talking about, it's like you've been unplugged from the matrix, and all of a sudden you see it and you realize what's going on. When I'll go in the grocery store, and I just walk through the center heading for the meat section, and I'm like, human food. And I get to the meat section, and then I just look around, and I'm like, everyone has garbage in their things, and they look unhealthy, they look upset, they look sick. And I'm like, so did you 162 days ago. And look, it's completely changing. Everything's turning around, and you just want to go up to somebody. I'm like, get that out of your basket, man. Don't eat that. But you can't, and you really wouldn't. But you have that desire to want to reach out, and you're actually doing something about it by having a YouTube channel.
You want to run around the supermarket, right? Just like tipping shopping carts over and going, you don't need any of
it. Yeah.
So just on that point, 162 days, and like, you've turned everything around in 162 days, plus you're having this impact with others as well. But like when you think about that, that is there's no other like there's nothing that can touch this as far as getting you healthy and starting a repair process. 162 days.
Dave,
Like what?
if you could make a drug that would do what happened to me, you would be a trillionaire.
Right?
If you could make a pill that did everything I just described, if you could make a pill that did one thing that I just described, you would be a gazillionaire. But this is,
Exactly.
and I understand why this isn't promoted anywhere in education. It's because you can't patent it and you can't make money off it. How are you going to make money off telling somebody not to eat something? And like, what? Hey, go just eat hamburger and eggs. That'll be $100,000, please. You know, how does that? I understand why they don't do it. It's because there's money to be made. Cancer is a big industry. So is diabetes. So is Alzheimer's. So all of this is the disease symptom industry is huge. And that's why I have so much respect for these doctors in the carnivore community that saw it for what it was and left. Baker and
Yeah.
Barry, and I've got so much respect for those guys. And what's her name? Boz, Annette Bosworth.
Dr. Buzz. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
she kind of did too. She shut down her practice for a year because she realized, she goes, I know nothing. I know nothing about this. This is crazy. They didn't teach us this. Why don't I know this? Well, it's like, well, somebody has to have known this and withheld it from you because this is too amazing.
Yeah, I mean, on that point, I remember talking to Dr. Chafee, and he was saying, like, using Dr. Ovadia as an example,
Yeah,
and he could make so much money from just doing one operation, one heart
yep.
operation. And he's out there saying, no, this is how you don't
Stay off my
need
table.
these,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I think that's interesting that there's something. We're talking about the mindset and how things don't bother you and how you want to solve problems and things, and when you want to help people. Maybe that's something that's really in our human nature that gets covered up with all of this disease or whatever it is, because you're feeling it. I'm feeling that way. I'm reaching out and helping people. I don't have to do that. You don't have to do that. Dr. Oveda doesn't have to do that. But you feel so good that you want to share it. And maybe that's just human nature, but a lot of that, just doesn't happen, when we're so inflamed and our mental health is so disturbed, and, we're so sick. I was in so much pain all the time, and I didn't realize just how much pain I was in all the time until it went away. And then it was like that fan turning off. And you're like, what is that? It's like, that's silence. Huh. And it's like deafening. The lack of pain is deafening. And some things aren't. Some things you'll notice, you're like, oh, that doesn't hurt anymore. And it used to be when I get out of my Jeep, it's like I feel this twinge, and I haven't felt that in 3 weeks. I'm gonna start paying attention to that, and then you realize that's completely gone. That is completely gone. So it's just so cool. But yeah, if we could come up with a pill that did any one of these things, but you can't. And that's why I think so many people, or so many medical professionals, and plus they have their whole standard of care thing they have to do. And I've heard stories, where somebody's in the hospital and a nurse comes up and slips them a little sticky note that says, "Look up carnivore diet. Don't tell them I told you." Where the person's dying of diabetes, and they're like, "Stop eating sugar and carbohydrates. Just eat fatty red meat and eggs." Like, I didn't tell you that. Why are they so afraid to say something like that to somebody that's so sick that they're dying? That is such a shame, and it's to me it's infuriating that it's like that.
On the, the gazillion-dollar pill point, what's your gazillion-dollar pill? So to get yourself to this point in 162 days, how have you been eating during the day?
Just I'll go through. I'll go through different changes. It's beef, water, and salt primarily. I'll get on an egg kick, and I'll have scrambled eggs with butter and salt, which there's something, and I tell everyone, all my carnivore family now, I'm like, butter and eggs is a match made in heaven. I said, it's the carnivore version of chocolate and peanut butter. I said, you're going to really love butter and eggs. And I do. And so I'll have 6 scrambled eggs with butter and salt on it. And or it'll be beef. It'll be, I'll get the chuck roast because, it's a good value. And I'll just cook it in the oven, and then I'll slice it thin and take the slices, fry them in bacon grease. Occasionally I'll have pork belly or bacon, but I noticed that I feel way better on ruminant meat, a lot better. And then it's funny because I bought a pork roast somewhat early on, and I cooked it in the crock pot at the house, and I took a bite, and I was like, I had no interest in it, none. I didn't want it. I just didn't want it. And so, but beef, it's like I can't get enough of it. And ground beef, I'll have that. Ground lamb, the lamb is the other one. Lamb is just like a treat. It's just amazing. And so I eat a lot of ground beef, a lot of lamb, a lot of roasts, and occasional bacon, and then eggs and water, and that is it. And no coffee, no dairy. I did do a little dairy early on because I was listening to Sally K. Norton about the oxalates, and she was talking about oxalate dumping. Well, right about the time I'm listening to that, my right elbow, all the way down to my hand, flared up, and it was hurting really bad. And I was like, I wonder if this is oxalate dumping. And she said, what you can do is eat a small piece of cheese, about the size of a cube of dice or a dice or something, and that will put extra calcium to give the oxalate something to grab, and then lemon water, something about the acid. And so I did that for about a week and a half. I started squeezing lemon in my water, and once a day I would eat this little cube of Parmesan cheese, and then guess what? The pain went away, and then I stopped. I stopped with the cheese and the lemons. So yeah, and I'm at a point where who knows? I don't know how much weight I'm going to lose. So when I was in the military, I was a big guy, right? I'm 6'3", and I remember like when I graduated recon school, we had to go get measured and weighed and everything, and measured for our uniforms. And I had a 32-inch waist and a 51-inch chest, and I had 10% body fat, and I weighed 275. So I was just a big dude, So, and I weigh 285 now, and I've got nowhere near the muscle mass I did when I was 21 back in those days. So I don't know where my body's going to want to settle at the weight. And so, but it doesn't matter because I'm just going to keep going until my body says, it's going to stop when it wants to. And so that's a lot of people ask me, well, what's your weight goal? I'm like, it's not my goal, it's my body. Wherever it wants to land, it's going to land, and then, and I find myself wanting to exercise more. It's like, wow, I'm going to do some push-ups. So I haven't exercised weight training, and I used to do that years ago. Like I said, I was into bodybuilding, and I had a weight trainer, and I gained all this muscle, and I was eating this stupid bodybuilder diet, 8 meals a day of chicken breast and broccoli and brown rice, and it worked. I don't know what kind of damage it did, but it did work. I mean, I lost a bunch of fat and gained a bunch of muscle, but obviously it was all backwards, compared to what we're doing now. Everything there is no fat, high carb, and now it's the opposite. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the process. I'm eager to see what's going to happen next. I don't know. Every day I look in the mirror and something is different. I'm starting to get like wrinkles on my stomach, like it's like, oh, that's the loose skin. It's like, I know that's going to happen, and I know it can also resolve itself over time through autophagy. But I still have weight to lose, obviously. But I sent you that before and after pic. Those pictures were 5 months apart, and you can see
it's amazing.
You can see how inflamed and sick I was in that before picture, and then that picture I did send you, That was 10 pounds ago. So I've lost 10 pounds since then. And so, yeah, I weigh myself because I'm always curious. I want information. We have in machining, that I do when, there's a machinist saying, it says, if you don't measure, you don't know. It says you're just guessing. And so I don't like to guess. I want to know on a lot of things. So I just weigh myself just as a metric to see what's going on. And I understand the scale doesn't know the difference between fat, water, bone, muscle. It just feels pressure, right? But if my weight, so here's something interesting. Last week, my weight was it was a stable 284. Step on the scale the next day, it's 286. It's 287. I was like, I wonder if I'm going to gain weight like what's her name, Kelly. I said, I wonder if my body's going to want to do that. And then the next day, 284. I was like, what was that all about? I don't know. I didn't panic. I'm really trusting my body. And I'm really, really in tune with my body's needs now. And I can tell when I need more fat. I can tell like what if I'm eating too much pork belly or something like that. I don't feel as good. So it's like, okay, this week's all beef, nothing but beef. And then by the end of that week, I feel like I'm on top of the world again, and ground beef, I really like. I seem to digest it really well. I know some people have trouble with the rendered fat with ground beef, and I don't. My mom, in particular, she has a problem with it. And so I said, well, you're going to have to figure out something else, and for now. So but that's the thing. We'll call each other. I'm like, okay, try this, try that, different carnivore hacks, if you will. It's like, and she's like, this is great. I love meat. I was like, well, this is what you're going to be eating. And she's losing weight, and she doesn't really like to weigh or anything, but she's like, this shirt that I was wearing the day that I started this, she goes, I put it on and it was loose. And I said, see, it's happening. Everything's happening. I said, that's just a symptom of it.
And how's her mobility?
Yeah, that's the other thing. Guess what she's doing now? She's getting up and going to the grocery stores and walking around and shopping. She hadn't even left her apartment in 3 years. So how cool is that? And I'll call her. I'm like, Mom, are you walking? Are you getting up and doing your thing? And then I've explained to her about the whole circadian rhythm thing, because I'd asked her how her sleep is, and she said, well, it's not so good, And I said, is your heart pounding really hard? And because Chafee was talking about how your heart prefers to run on ketone, and all of a sudden, boom, boom, your heart will just start pounding, not fast, not irregular, but just hard. She goes, it was pounding so hard the other night, it woke me up. I said, that's good. It's because it's using ketone for the first time in 83 years. And it's liking it. And but it was keeping her from sleeping. And so I was trying to explain to her, I'm like, well, try to, at first light, try to go outside and get the light in your eyes. Try to walk around. You don't have to walk much as you can, and don't do anything stupid. Don't get crazy. Just get on your walker, walk down to the end of the block and back. So that's what I did. So remember when I started, I made it to the end of the parking lot and back, and counted myself lucky for that. And now I'm walking 8 miles a day with a rucksack on my back. And I said, I said, who knows what God has in store for your mom? I said, you're in your mind, you're thinking, well, this is the end. I'm getting close to the end. My body's shutting down. I said, no, it's not. I said, as long as you're sucking in air, your body wants to heal. It wants to heal, and it wants to keep you alive. And I said, so now she's been into a month. She goes, it's unbelievable. She goes, I feel so different. I can feel my body healing. I can feel things changing. She's like, this thing on my skin's gone, and I got this lump on my leg. It's going away, and my joints aren't hurting. And I was like, see, I said, your body's healing. I said, so the fat I said, that's just one symptom of the disorder or the dis-ease that's going on in our systems, and so don't focus on that. That's not the only goal. That's just one of the many, many, many problems that your body has to fix. It's just one of them. It's a good metric because we see it, and we got vanity reasons why we want to do that, and it feels good, and your clothes fit better, and and everything, and it's good, and that's also one of the things that people see the first, and that's one of the things. I think that's why I'm being approached so much, because when I'm at a show, people come up and they're like, even I was going to tell you, even at this last show, I had a guy next to me, and I had never met him before, and real nice. We kind of hit it off. And we're talking shop and all this. And then I saw him about a week later at a little convention that we're having. It's called a Hammering, where a bunch of makers get together and they show trade secrets and you teach new people. So we're at that, and he was standing there. He goes, "Hey, yeah, I know, I just met you." He goes, "But I want to say something." He goes, I was standing there listening to all your customers come up to your table, and he goes, and I heard about 65 times about how different you look." He goes, what are you doing, man?" He's like, what is that?" And so I made it all out for him, and he's like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. He goes, and I showed him the picture, and he's like, "Oh my God, that's what you look like?" I was like, "That's what I looked like in October." And he was like, "Holy mackerel." He goes, "Well, I don't know if you can tell, but I got a little weight to lose." And I was like, "Yeah, a little. You could do it." And so it's awesome. And the weight, the first time I did this, the weight was the goal. And man, was there such a pot of gold past that weight. The health, that's better than any money. It's better than anything that you can imagine. How you feel, and it's like, the proper human diet. It's like, oh, wow, I guess this is how a human is supposed to feel. Wow. And I've heard Chafee say, he's like, well, he talks about species appropriate diets. He goes, what do you think would happen if we captured just an adult male healthy Bengal tiger, rippling muscles, gleaming white teeth, beautiful hair, and we put it in a zoo and started feeding it biscuits and gravy, pizza and Skittles and Coke? How long until it would be arthritic, bald, fat, and his teeth were rotting out? He goes, all the human diseases. How long until it was like that? He goes, and then if we started feeding it fatty red meat like a gazelle or whatever it eats, he goes, how long until it was rippling muscle and his hair was awesome again and his teeth were great again and the arthritis was gone? And so that tiger in the wild, he isn't like a bodybuilder that's working hard to be that way. That's just the way he is. And I think we humans are like that too. It's like the way I'm feeling, the way you're feeling, that's just the way we are. We just didn't know it. Our whole lives, we've been lied to, and we didn't know that this is what we are. And this is what we are, in my opinion. I believe we are carnivores, especially after talking to Chafee, I haven't talked to him, but listening to Chafee. It's unbelievable. There's a lot of evidence there, the way, our stomach acid, our digestive system, the way we absorb fat out of our diet, it's all there. It's all there, so, and, but if you don't believe that, just try it. Just try eating nothing but meat for a month and see if you don't feel like a different species all of a sudden.
Yeah. I'm going to struggle to get that image of a bald Bengal tiger out of my mind for the rest of the day now. Just imagine.
Yeah, well, it's true.
Bengal
it's like,
tiger with a comb over or something,
looks like a 1978 gym teacher or something. Yeah, but but it's true. It's like, how long would it be for that tiger till he didn't look like that specimen anymore? Where it was just like, what's wrong with your tiger? Well, guess what? What's wrong with us? Because we have all those things. And I don't know how many of those things are going to completely reverse in my life. I mean, I just turned 53, so I don't know how much time I have to fix it. None of us know how much time we have, but what I'm saying is, I don't know if, there's a bunch of things or damage that I've done when I was younger that will resolve. It might, and I use you as an example to a lot of people. I'm like, this guy had a stroke when he was 17 years old and had a pretty severe limp all of his life. And then all of a sudden one day his wife is like, you're not limping. Or, I remember that story you told on one of your episodes. And I pointed people at it. I'm like, you see what happened? I said, his whole adult life, his body wanted to fix that. It wanted to. All it needed was time and material and the opportunity. And with our current life, we don't get that. You don't get the material. We don't give it the time. And we definitely don't give it the opportunity with the hyperinsulinemia and the glycation and everything else. And so, we give it the right environment, the right materials. It's unbelievable what it starts feeling. Reminds me of that movie when we were younger, those little spaceships that would go around and fixing the building. They just started fixing everything. I can't remember what that was. Batteries not included. There was a movie called Batteries Not Included. There was those little spaceship aliens that just started fixing everything. And I feel like that's what our body does. It just starts fixing everything. You just turn around, you're like, oh, that's fixed. Huh. That's what it feels like anyway to me. And so, I've listened to a lot of your guests, and not everybody's had the amazing results, but a lot of people have. A lot of people have, and I just listened to that. You had some German guy on there that I listened to yesterday, and he's having amazing results. And he's so excited about it, and I think it's just awesome. So, yeah, I don't have cheat days anymore, and I have no desire to cheat. When I do go to these shows, and I travel and I go to the show, and when you're out and about or you're abroad or something, sometimes it's really difficult. But I found a little hack for these shows, and that is salami. Salami. You can keep it at room temperature for a while, and it's got a ton of fat in it. And a little 1/4-inch thick stack of it will fill you up. Will fill me up. And so I told my wife, I said, well, before I travel up to this next show that I'm going to in a couple of days, I said, I got to get me some road salami and some show salami. So in case I can't, get to anything, and at least I can do that until I can get to a restaurant, and order an omelet or order a steak or whatever, hamburger patty or whatever it is. But that sure is a nice little hack. And then that friend of mine that cheated, he goes, I came with a butt whipping. I told him that. I said, you need to learn the salami hack. I said, don't ever go to town without a pack of salami. I said, in case you get stuck somewhere, I said, it'll kill your hunger. It'll just kill it. And it does me anyway. I said, give it a shot, give it a try, see what it does for you. And he's like, will do, salami. He's ready to do. So, but
Yeah.
I really appreciate what you do, Dave. I do. And I tell people, I'm like, if you start feeling alone in this, you start feeling, like, wow, it's just unique when I'm having. I start watching Dave's videos. Just watch them. I said, and you're going to get all these real life accounts by real life people that are going through it. And some are they're struggling. Some have fallen off the wagon and got back on. Some, are just starting. Some have been doing it for years. I said, so you're going to get a whole spectrum of perspectives. So just watch Dave and watch what he does, or listen to the people. And that's what I started doing early on. I mean, I'll listen to your shows while I'm working, almost like an audiobook. I just have them running in the background. I'm over in the grinding room working, and I'm listening to the interviews. So I think it's really cool. And every one of them, there's at least one what I call the nugget, where I learn something. I'm like, oh, I like that. I never heard that before, or I'm going to try that. There's always a nugget in every single one, at least one good nugget, sometimes 10 nuggets, So
I was talking to someone else about this kind of thing the other day. It's like, I'll sometimes have a Chafee Q&A or a Ken Berry Q&A or something on in the background as I'm doing other stuff, and it's like you kind of listening to it, but you're also engaged in what you're doing, and then suddenly you'll just hear this nugget and you'll go, oh, I've got to write that down. That's really important.
Yeah. And then you're just kind of hearing it through osmosis. It's almost like, when children are learning their language as they're growing up in the household, they're not speaking to anybody really, but they're hearing all this speaking and they're learning. And so you're learning about, like same thing with Chafee. I'll have him playing, those long 3-hour calls or things that he does where he's answering questions. Thank you for the super chat, and he's just doing. I'll just listen to those while I'm working or driving sometimes, and it's almost like you're learning through osmosis. And all of a sudden, when you're speaking to somebody about it, you're like, wow, I can't believe I know that. I can't believe I remembered that. What he's talking about there, and I think this kind of surrounding yourself with the information. It depends on how serious you are about this too, and it depends on why you're doing it. And I've heard several people say, a lot of people that come to carnivore like I did the second time, because you get a health scare or you got a big problem, you've got something you can't solve, and you start reading these thousands of comments about how it healed this, healed that, and you kind of get to the end of your rope, and you're like, well, why not? I'm going to try it. And they're like, oh my God, it worked, or it helped. It helped. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a believer in it, man. And, I'm just going to keep going, and I've got no plan to have cheat days and all that. And I'm like, well, why would I go cheat with a poison that tried to kill me? Why would I do that? It
That's
doesn't make
right.
any sense. And I
Well,
just don't have the desire.
now you know how bad it is for you as well. It's like, why would I put it back
Yeah.
into my body?
Yeah. And I have no desire to cheat. So it's not even like a cheat. To me, a cheat would be like, okay, I'm going to get a really expensive ribeye. It's more of a splurge. It's not a cheat. So, maybe a cheat might be bratwurst because there's maybe a few iffy things in there. It's like, ooh, it's a different flavor. But it's amazing also the nuances and all the meat when you eat it. People are like, oh, it must be boring. It is not. It is not. And I enjoy every single meal that I eat, and I look forward to it. And I mean, I can tell when I cook, my hamburger patties, and I can tell if it was cooked in lamb fat or bacon fat, beef fat. I can tell. It's like I never used to have that, sensitivity and that discrimination of those flavors before, and I do now. And even the water, you'll get like a San Pellegrino or something like that. And I remember listening to uh, who was it, Jordan Peterson, when he was on Rogan, and he said beef, salt, and water, and that's it, And he was saying that, and he's like, "Ooh, what kind of water?" And Jordan Peterson's like, "Well," he goes, "when you're down to three things, that matters." He goes, "We've got sparkling water, we've got mineral water." He goes, "I start looking." He goes, "There's water menus." He goes, "When you're down to three things, you start getting real darn selective with one of them, And he goes, "And your salt." You're like, "What kind of salt do you like?" And so my mom uses smoked salt, which is interesting. And I've had smoked salt in the past, and just a little tiny bit adds a ton of flavor. And so I'm thinking about getting some of that and putting it on some beef and trying that. And, but anyway, I just love eating, the eggs and beef and the bacon. Okay, I don't eat bacon every day, but it's an occasional thing, and I really enjoy it. And I really like cooking the bacon just to have the fat to cook other things because the bacon fat is
Ah,
so good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can you get bacon in Japan? Like American style
Not,
bacon or whatever
not,
type of bacon
not
you like?
good
No.
stuff. Yeah, not good stuff. It's
Yeah.
so I just avoid it because there's too many additives.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's probably.
So one thing I just wanted to touch on was I don't know if because he's so unique, he's easy to do impressions of, but I got some as you were impersonating Jordan Peterson there, I got some serious Jordan Peterson vibes. It's
Mhm.
maybe it's because he's so unique. It's easy
Yeah.
to kind of
I,
yeah.
I love listening to him. And again, I've sat there and listened to his, talks over and over and over again, but I love the way he explains things. And he's like, well, yeah, you're damn well better because it's and the way he explains things. And it just, I love the interviews that he's done where the interviewer tries to attack him and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And he's not mean. He just turns it around on you in such a way that they're just like, okay, bad idea. But when you and everyone, not everyone, but a lot of people, those of us that realize just how intelligent that man is, and when he's saying he's having all these wonderful effects on carnivore too, it lent a lot of validity to this way of eating. And I think he's responsible for a lot of people. Him and Michaela are responsible for a lot of people trying this. I believe that, and Joe Rogan too. So that little
Yeah.
trifecta that happened there was unbelievable. Uh, when he interviewed Sean Baker is when I was like, because decades ago I did the Atkins diet, and it was somewhat effective. I got into ketosis for the first time in my life, and that was interesting. But there was a couple things I don't think the Atkins got right. I mean, it was super high dairy, and there was no focus on the fat. It didn't really focus on that. So there were some problems with it, but in comparison to what I'm doing now, there were some problems. Like if I did that now, that would be like super dirty carnivore, and probably wouldn't have the results I'm having, because I didn't have the results that I'm having now. Even doing keto, I didn't have the results that I'm having now, and I was doing pretty good keto. I mean, I was fatty red meat, and I would once a day I would shred up some cabbage, cut up an avocado, and I would put sardines on it and olive oil and a little bit of Parmesan cheese and some salt and pepper and a little bit of that apple cider vinegar, and I make a salad out of that. It's good, it's crunchy, and it had all these flavors, and it had the acid, and it had the little bit of bite and all that. It was really, really good. And then until I found out, about Dr. Chafee, and I started finding out about oxalates, and I started finding out, I was like, wonder what happened if I do that last 5%. So I gave it all up, and sure enough, after that, I'd say within 3 weeks, I think I lost right around 30 pounds when I gave up the last vegetable matter. It just went away. I was like, what in the world? It was just crazy. And I remember I was really tired at night when that happened. I would come home from my shop, and normally I would sit there. I'd come home 9:30, in the evening, sit down, watch series or something with my wife, watch a movie. We'd sit there till 10, 11 o'clock watching movies or whatever, go to bed, and I'd be on my phone watching YouTube videos, sometimes till 2, 3 in the morning, and then be super tired in the morning. Well, especially during that time when I transitioned from keto to carnivore, I would have like this super even energy all day. And then all of a sudden about 8:30, I was like, and I could feel it in my eyes, almost like behind my eyes. It was like this little, like, oh man, I think I'm starting to get tired. Like, I better go home. And I drive home and say hello to everybody. I say, I'm going to bed. And I go upstairs, lay down. Within a minute, I was asleep. And then I'd wake up in the morning, weigh myself, pound and a half, 2 pounds. And I was just crashing and sleeping. My body was just going to I think it was just going to like a super repair mode or something. And it was just burning fat like crazy. And I really wanted to sleep, but I wasn't tired at all during the day. But as soon as it started getting dark and it was nighttime, there was none of this watching TV, sitting up watching my phone and doing all that. That was gone out of the window, and I just couldn't wait to go to sleep. And I did not wake up until 6:30 in the morning. I didn't wake up and go to the bathroom. And then my whole life, I was like tossed and turned and all this stuff because I'd have sleep apnea. And your body's like, "Hey, dummy, wake up! You're gonna die." It's like I'll go to sleep and I'll wake up in the same position. I was like, that's weird. That's never happened before. And then, or breathing through my nose only when I'm sleeping. And I know that, I can tell I'm just breathing through my nose. And even when I'm doing my walks, and I was telling you about, I'll notice halfway through, I'm like, my mouth is completely closed. When I first started, I'm breathing through my mouth, and I'm just breathing through my nose with a 50-pound rucksack walking a couple miles. And I got my mouth closed and I'm breathing. It's like so many things are repairing. And I just want to tell people that are going to listen to this. These are, from what I gather, these are pretty extraordinary results, and not everybody's going to have that. And I don't know what kind of results I'm going to have going forward, but up to this point, I had like this results spurt. This stuff just happened, and if that doesn't happen right away, don't freak out about it, because your body's going to repair what it wants to repair in the order that it wants to repair it. And if your body fat isn't high on its priority list, don't freak out about it. And even if your body starts gaining fat, it's doing that for a reason. It's to repair something. It wants to fix something. And I think about Kelly Hogan all the time, how she gained that 26 pounds. Then all of a sudden after that, she just went into mega repair mode like I did. And then all of a sudden, and I think for women, the fat is so important for their hormones. And I've heard that from Bella and a lot of other ladies that seem that the extra fat is even more important for them. So if you're hearing this and you're like, man, I want to have all that, you may have better results, and your results might be slower, and you might not have the same results. You might have something else. Who knows? We're all different, but we are all humans, and so we've got all the same internal working and And I think this is the way we're supposed to eat. I really do. And I'm not just
Very,
saying that because somebody told me. I'm saying it because I've lived it.
mm,
You
very
know,
good advice. Yeah. So, Todd, if people want to reach out to you, do you have any social media or do you have a website or anything
I do.
else?
So it's my name and then Knives, Knives, Todd Bag Knives at gmail.com. That's my email. And then Todd Bag Knives is my Instagram. You can go on there and send me a message. And then it's just Todd Bag on Facebook. You can go on there and send me a message if and I mean, if you just want to know more about what I've been through, or better yet, you want to start the carnivore diet and you want some tips or maybe what to expect, or if I can help anybody, I don't care who you are, if I can help you through this and be some small part of your success and journey, that would be awesome, and I'll take the time to answer you and do that.
Thank you. And Todd, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your journey. It's so good to hear how well you're doing and also how much impact you're having. Thank you so much.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity to do so. Really appreciate
Cheers.
it, Dave, and thank you for what you're doing. It's making an impact. You're making a difference, believe me.